to Flyer Kite Demos. In this video, originally I was going to walk you through the process of creating things with the Flyer Kite method. But as we've already mentioned, having both vanishing points on the iPad screen ends up with very, very extreme angles. And so I'll show you the demonstrations that I put together, and then we're going to go a completely different route, and I'm going to show you how to start using this in the real world with references. So this is what the demonstrations end up looking like. Of course, we started off with this one, and this one is not too extreme because it's just really a box bench. But then we get beyond that and we end up with the house. Again, not too extreme, but it doesn't have a roof. It's not very usable in its current form. And it's, you know, these corners are tiny. Let's be real. So it's not perfect, but it does demonstrate what's going on. Of course, the chair, not too bad, but again, a little extreme. You know, the kind of difference between the tallest and the shortest part. It's a little extreme. And also, not all chairs look like that anymore. So we want to start looking. This is where the real extremity comes in. So I went in and did the boxy shaped sofa, and it really just looked so distorted because of having these vanishing points so close together, because in the real world they would be way off the screen. What I'm going to do instead of doing those constructions, the kind of walk-through constructions, is to pick up real-world photographs that you would use as references. And there is absolutely no shame in using a reference. Real-world cartoonists do it all the time. And why wouldn't you? You know, none of us can remember every single detail of everything. You don't have to store everything in your memory. That's why we have Google. And so to use a reference and to get something accurate just makes absolute sense. So let's start off with our house example. And I've used this one with the clapboard siding so that you can see the lines, the way they converge away to some far distant vanishing point. So if we just look at the way we went through it before, this is the closest vertical, the closest corner to us. We're not sure exactly where the horizon line is. It'll be somewhere where the sort of clapboard line runs horizontal, so probably round about here. But that's not that important, because what we want to do is, all we need to do is realize the lines are running away from us like this. So the vanishing point is somewhere probably just beyond my home button. And on this side, the vanishing point is running away much, much further. It's going to be way off. And you can see that this gives us the perfect demonstration of why compressing the two vanishing points onto the screen gives us such a weird, distorted looking view. Anyway, so with this house, you can see if we take our closest vertical, all we have to do is get an approximate sense of, okay, this line, the shortest side probably, is going to be more extreme. And so the vanishing point is going to be further away, but this is close to the edge of the page, so we're not going to see a lot of that one. You can see that the closest side of the window is taller than the further away side. So again, you've got that converging sense going away from you. And for this side, we decide where we want the end of the house to be, and we just make an approximate difference between the tallness, the length of this corner and the length of that corner. And we make it happen like that. And then you can actually do a lot of this by copying. So again, you can go in and put in your windows, make sure that the vertical closest to the closest corner is slightly longer than the further away one. You can also draw lines that kind of fit within this converging thing going on. So if you wanted to, you could find this vanishing point off here and put a little spot on your table or something way off beyond my camera, and draw your converging lines if you want to as you first begin this. And you can start to see how you can work out ways of making this work for yourself. Another thing that's always useful to see when you use a reference like this is you can see that each window appears to be a little bit narrower, and then the door is quite a narrow little bit. So it really does help you when you have a reference to get this kind of reality, because There's a kind of a formula that if you were an architect or someone, you would know how to do, but we're not architects. We just need an approximation. So if it's a little bit narrower, that is enough for cartooning. If this is a bit narrower, it's enough. And so you can go on like that. You can use a reference like this to start migrating your construction skill with Fly a Kite or something like that. And just that use of the largest thing, if the closest thing to you is big, this further away thing is small. That converging line principle, you can start using it to convert your skills into the real world. On to our next example, this chair, and you can see exactly why I chose this because it's so boxy, fits in so well with our principles. And again, 2-point perspective, we're going to be using Fly a Kite, but the thing with this, as I mentioned before with a chair, chairs we tend to draw them from eye level perspective. So this one is not perfect for Fly a Kite because we can actually, if you look here, the light is reflecting off the very top of this, even this top chair cushion. So the horizon line is probably just above somewhere here. We're not quite on eye level with the top of the chair. But again, this is for demonstration purposes. You can see we've got this beautiful convergence going on. So this is our closest corner. This converges away. This converges away in this direction. And we can start to work out where the vanishing points must be if we're using this as a reference. And you can see how the back lines fall in to those converged things. If we join top and bottom of that away to the vanishing point, we start to get the back corner. So you can see that by using the converging line principles for using a reference like this and the converging line principles, you can quickly construct the boxy parts of it like this. So that goes away, and that goes through there. And once you've got the boxy parts into it, you can go and wing it for the rest. So you can say, okay, this seat cushion is approximately straight like this. You don't see a huge difference between the height of the seat cushion here and the height there, but you know it goes slightly narrower. So if you wanted to, you could narrow that vertical a little bit for the height of the cushion. And similarly here, we know that the height of this will be vertically longer, the back of the seat cushion, but we can't see it all. So your eye starts to play tricks and you don't know which is longer. We know that there's going to be a slight dip towards the vanishing point there. So you can construct the boxy bits using your converging lines, or you can just use your eye and say, okay, the closest corner, converge away, fit this one in, come up with some convergence, fit in my far corner, and then start to, if you wanted to, you can use these things. Again, I chose a reference which would show convergence in these strips of kind of pattern and wovenness in the seat construction. And then you can fit in your cushions where you can see them, where they're not obscured by this closest side. And so going and finding yourself references is so helpful. Our next example, here is our trusty sofa, and I'm sure you'll agree that this one is looking a whole lot more real world and less distorted than the one that I constructed before. And it's entirely due to being able to have the vanishing points way off beyond the screen where we need them. So if we think about our principles of 2-point perspective, we always start with our closest vertical, our closest corner to us. And with something like this, it's easier to start with the boxy shaped sofa than it is to start with the leg. Obviously, this corner is closer to us than that leg, but just a hint or a tip. Start with the boxy construction, put the legs in afterwards. It's much simpler. So if we start with this nearest corner, and you can see that running away towards these distant and off the page vanishing points, there go our lines converging away into the distance. and on this side again converging away to some vanishing point, but not hugely. You can see on this side the vanishing point must be really distant because the convergence is quite small. Once we have that in, we can fill in our ends, and then you can start to put in some more of the details. So we can put in these flat details. Obviously that one we can see is hidden slightly behind these cushions, so we can go and put in the converging, how these converge slightly towards the distant vanishing point on that side. And we have to decide whether we're going to choose the edge of the base, which goes like that, and then the cushions overlap it a little bit, so there's that nice shadow underneath. But you can see how you can put the cushions together, and if you want to curve the lines a little bit to get the roundness of the cushions, you can do that as well. The back seat cushions, they're dropping away slightly over to the right. This one dropping away a whole lot more because it's at an angle. So that drops like that. And then this has to meet up with that in the corner. We can put in a hint of that far arm, and then these cute cylindrical bolster cushions come down and just give us a little bit of extra interest. So it's hard to tell exactly where the horizon line would go here. You can see that this converges a little bit. This cushion is a bit higher than that one, but sometimes photographs give you a little bit of distortion as well, so it's not a perfect science, this crossover between construction and the real world. But you can definitely use the converging principles to help your brain figure things out, and then go in and fill in the details afterwards. So we can fill in our little feet. You can see the furthest one only slightly visible there. Oh, actually that's the middle one, isn't it? The furthest one, we can see the shadow of it here behind, but we can't actually see it. So I would be tempted probably to leave that off altogether if I were drawing this, because it feels, to me it would feel odd, but there is a leg there, so you can put it in. Okay, so those are our crossover between construction and real world examples. That's how you start using photographs to, initially you can trace if you want to, and I would actually encourage you to trace, because there's no shame whatsoever in using a reference. There's no shame in tracing initially as you try to get these principles into your head. As you go further, you'll want to be able to work without tracing, and you'll get faster and faster at copying and constructing as your technical copying skills are good, and now you start to feed in the perspective understanding to underpin that. So, time for our next video.